I'm here today at the Mer Bleue bog, one of the most popular hiking areas in the National Capital Region. I'm not really here to talk about the bog today. I'll do that in another video. I'm here to talk more about one of the factors that have contributed to the formation of this bog, and that is the presence of huge deposits of post-glacial sand along the periphery of this bog. In previous videos, I've talked about Precambrian bedrock, I've talked about limestone bedrock, and I've talked about the vast beds of clay and clay soils that lie in the Ottawa Valley. And today I'm going to talk about the fourth type of superficial geology in this region, and that is these beds of the sand. My name is Nick Stow. I'm an ecologist, and this is the ecology of the Ottawa Valley. In previous videos, I've talked about the past glaciation of the Ottawa Valley, how up until about 14,000 years ago, the Ottawa Valley was covered by up to a kilometer in glacial ice, how that glacial ice retreated and was replaced by a large, shallow, brackish sea called the Champlain Sea, how that sea retreated as the Earth rebounded from the glaciation, and then the flow of the enormous post-glacial Ottawa River through the valley, and then its gradual diminishment as those glaciers retreated and those glacial flows shrunk. When the glaciers passed over this area, they of course ground up the stone that they were flowing over. And in that process, they left behind a lot of sand. They basically ground that bedrock up into a fine mix of sand and pebbles and gravel that we call glacial till. You can see how the land here falls gradually down to Mer Bleue. Mer Bleue is this low area in front of me. You can see a water channel that is known as a lag. I'll talk more about that when I'm talking more about Mer Bleue. And then on the far side, you might be able to make out an area where the trees look a little bit higher. That's the other side of this channel. And between around 10,000 years ago, 12 to 10,000 years ago, the Ottawa River flowed through this channel, carrying enormous sediments. And in the process, it deposited a lot of those sediments as a sandbar. That sandbar is not really visible as such right now. You can see all of these trees, but you can kind of make out the shape of it as it slopes down to the bog itself. It might not be obvious at first that this is an old sandbar. With all this vegetation that's developed over the last 10,000 years, it's difficult to really get a good look at the superficial geology. And the upper layers of the soil here are probably more of a sandy loam that has been created through the mixing of that base sandy soil with the organic matter that has been produced by this forest over the past 10,000 years. However, when we get a feature like this, which is a tip-up, it's a fallen tree. This one was blown down just about a year ago when a very large windstorm blew through the Ottawa area. And it has exposed this material down here. This very, very fine sand. And it's this sand right here that makes up this geological feature on which I'm standing. Now, how does that relate to Mer Bleue? Well, I'll explain that. The relationship between Mer Bleue bog and this old but now vegetated sandbar has to do with how quickly water infiltrates sandy soils. Infiltrate means to move through. When we visited the Lemieux landslide and we were talking about clay soils, we were talking about soils in which water moves through the soil at as slow as 0.5 millimeter per hour. When we're talking about sandy soils, we're talking about soils in which water can move through the soil at up to 20 centimeters an hour, very, very quickly. Consequently, what we get is infiltration of precipitation in the sandbar, and then it's spread laterally from the sandbar into the adjacent wetland. When water moves through soil like that as groundwater, it typically comes out with very, very low nutrients. Not zero nutrients, but very, very low. And it comes out cold. And both of those factors will inhibit decomposition. Now, immediately adjacent to the sandbar, in this marsh that I'm overlooking, there are still some traces of minerals, some nutrients that plants can make use of. But as that water moves even further into the bog itself, or it even actually upwells into the center of the bog, it has almost no nutrients and it comes in very, very cold. Both of those factors inhibit decomposition. Consequently, we get the buildup of organic matter, of peat. We get the development of the acidic conditions that form a bog like this. In part 2 of my discussion of sandy soils, I'm going to take us to Constance Bay on the Ottawa River. We're going to talk about Constance Bay itself, the mouth of Constance Creek, and we're going to talk about the Constance Bay Sandhills. And then we're going to go even further up the valley, past the city of Pembroke, past the town of Deep River, to a place called Mayors Bay, where we're going to look at the Mayors Bay esker, a glacial fluvial feature formed beneath the glaciers that once covered this area. And we're going to talk about its relationship to a creek and a wetland that exist there. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of this discussion, and I hope you'll come back for some more. Thank you very much.